Hello, and welcome to this show, the Herald Cafe show. As you know, Saligao has a lot of stars. So we have one of the stars of Saligao with us, the writer, the artist, Miss Clarice Vaz. Thank you for coming here and giving us your time, valuable time. I will dive deep into my questions. And first, I would like to ask you about the book that you are holding in your hand, ROMALINA. What? Adeus Portugal, Namaste Goa, Goodbye Africa. It's such a book. I was just flipping through the book, and it is such a book of anthropological and cultural treasure. Like what inspired you to write this book, and what is the process of going through this, and why are you doing it? Is it a social responsibility that you have taken up, and now that you see that heritage may get faded over the time, on that?
Okay, ROMALINA, it's a lovely name.
Yes.
That's my grandmother's name.
Okay.
And she has been an inspiration to me. She, this book is an odyssey of our family, my family, from going out of Goa into Africa. And being an Goan, so I kind of tried to write on how life passed through me as a Goan. So it's like a witness account. So basically this book is just a documentation of a life of a Goan. And I've used my own photographs, my personal photographs, and that of my family. I've used pictures of implements, architecture, and furniture, and food, of Goa. And I've used illustrations, a lot of illustrations in this book, maps, and it's all catered to telling a story of how I came to be a Goan.
Okay.
So what has happened, what inspired me to write this book is that I wanted a book where our heritage, our real ancestry,
Yes.
and emotions that are integral in a part of being a Goan were all available in one book with his historical background.
Okay.
With a historical background. And I wanted it like a storybook, and I couldn't find one. So I just took a pen and started writing. I'm a nurse by profession, a midwife, and this was something alien to me to do this. But in the 90s and in the early part of the 21st century, I was like the main nurse in my village when there were very few hospitals around. So
here in Saligao?
In Saligao.
Okay.
So I was able to go to the people's homes, and I saw a drastic change, happening over those 20 years.
What kind of change are you talking about?
Well, I was just going to their houses, just giving them their injections or checking blood sugars or maybe blood pressure or anything. And then I saw these grinding stones outside, discarded.
Yes, yeah.
I saw them yanking out their windows and putting in these sliding glass windows. The tiles of their homes were worn out, so they were removing it, and this new tiles, Spartex tiles that came in, everything was changing into that modern way of life. It's more convenient. So that made me realize that I could see our culture changing.
Yes.
And well, we got to embrace our new culture, but I wanted to write a time period of life that once was, because our children were waking up to a new kind of way of life that didn't match our heritage, and it was almost normal for them. So I took a pen and pencil and I started to write, and I took my mobile phone and I started to photograph, and that's how I had a collection of stories, and I began putting it on social media. And that's when a lot of people started writing to me, and they started adding to these stories.
Okay.
and this was just so wonderful. And I said, with all these new settlers coming into our land, our whole way of life changed.
Yes.
Different languages,
Yeah.
different dresses, different food. And this is what I thought I'd maybe capture in this book, and that's how I came to write this book.
Lovely,
basically.
great. Thank you that you have wrote this book
Thank
about
you.
that inheritance and the culture of Goa. And more about this book, in the last part, I have seen that there's a table where at one point of time your grandparents are born, and at the time what is happening in Europe
Yeah.
and what is
So
happening
that
in
is
the world. Yeah.
that is a chronological chart
Yes.
that's in this book.
Yeah.
So in part, I wanted to discuss on how I managed to get onto my family tree.
Yes.
It was done by Richard D'Souza.
Yes, I was coming to that. Yeah.
Yes. So it was done by Richard D'Souza, and he did it on his family tree, and it turned out to be the Moira genealogy family tree. It was a tree.
Okay.
And my name happened to pop up on that tree. And when I looked, I saw 7 generations.
Okay.
So I studied that, and I realized that I could relate to the different
World
time
events.
periods
Yeah.
of what was happening in Portugal and what was happening in Europe.
Yes.
Now, if you look at our history
Yes.
and our heritage, we have got the Western influences.
We do.
Yeah. So I realized how my ancestors rather were Gauds, Saraswat, Brahmins at one point. I have found my roots in Malar,
Yes.
in Diwar.
Yeah.
And from there we came into Moira. We settled into Moira because of the plague, probably.
That is 1919, 1920. That
No, it will be much earlier, maybe
Okay.
in the 18th century.
18th century. Okay.
18th
Yeah.
century, because of the plague,
Yeah.
they came into Moira, and so I have 2 ancestral houses in Moira,
Okay.
and that is documented in this book. It is the pink house,
Okay.
which is my great grandfather's house, and then the current house where I grew up
Yes.
is my grandfather's house. So this is a story of, I started to trace back of how my ancestors grew from, they changed from
Yes.
being Hindus with the Indian tradition to Christians with an Iberian tradition,
Okay.
traditions. So we are, Goa was a small little Portuguese enclave in this vast British India.
Yes.
So see how I do believe that we have our markers, like we have our European and British influences
Yes.
together with our Indian influences. And that's why I do believe that we are a unique breed. But sadly, we are a minority in our land. And that is disheartening, because our culture, our cultural heritage,
Yes.
and including our natural heritage,
Hmm.
is being destroyed today. So basically, it's what I'm trying to get is that the influences from Europe
Yeah.
that came in from the Portuguese,
Yes.
had changed our
Customs,
customs and
lifestyles,
lifestyles
Yeah.
here in Goa
Yes.
at
yes.
one point.
That's wonderful to see it in a one page, or 2 pages that you have made the table to see
So
what
it's
is
from the
happening here.
16th century
Yeah.
till the 21st century.
Yes.
I've documented this in this book, ROMALINA.
Great
So
work.
besides getting Goan stories,
Hmm.
besides getting what's in a Goan storeroom, what's in a Goan kitchen, or our way of life, you will also get how we transformed from our Hindu ancestors to our Christian ancestors, and who we really are today.
Yes.
So the whole journey, I tried to document this. I did this also because if you've noticed, there are many Malapas becoming marks here.
Yeah.
Many of the non-Goans using the Portuguese passport route illegally
yes.
to go to Europe. So
Sorry.
the original manuscript of this was known as trading places. So I wrote this manuscript. It was almost 90,000 words, and I gave it to Heta Pandit. I said, is this something that, I mean, does it have a story? And she said, it's beautiful,
Yes.
and I'm going to turn it around on its head. I'm going to butcher it. And she, along with Salika Virji,
Okay.
who's a talented artist and copywriter and even a blogger, they sat down and sequenced these chapters. And then it went on to Valmiki Falerio, who checked on the history,
The facts.
the facts of the history. And so ultimately it was the ROMALINA team that formed itself, and I was so lucky to have people enjoying what I did. And it went on the desk of Beena Naik,
Okay.
who is a senior graphic artist.
Yes.
And you can see that she has even done these azuelo tiles and all the illustrations inside. And this book is just loaded with photographs,
Yes.
and it can evoke nostalgia, a lot of stories. It's got a lot of history, beautifully explained. And then finally it does have the chronological chart, as we were talking about. This is a chronological chart where the influences of the world and the influences of Portugal, Goa, my family tree, and Southeast Asia. So if you notice the Renaissance happening in the 16th century in Europe, it had its impact in Goa.
The architectural
Yes.
influences.
So yeah, and Goa got its taste of whatever was happening there, and it was so fascinating writing this book, because when I was looking through history, see, I didn't go and research.
Yes.
I didn't go to big libraries. I relied on my family tree, which was written, as I said, by Richard D'Souza, who has 39,000 entries, and they are all verified entries. And that was amazing job that he and his team that they are doing, and I'm part of the team now. And we keep on adding to these, to the website, So what I was saying is
the team of Richard D'Souza's, how they have 39,000 entries.
So the influences of Europe came into Goa, and if you see many of these themes of columns, of these domes, arches, of the churches,
Yes.
of the houses, they were all copied, the designs, and they were also blended with Indian influences. And that's what makes Goa different from the rest of India, and I would think even from the rest of the world. And that is how unique we are. It's so very important to know that the houses of Goa are not seen in any part of the world.
Yes.
So that is the reason I came out with this book. I came out with pictures. If you go into my village, like or even in Moira or in Saligaon, if you go into a house, you will see the influences of maybe the Goans who came in from Karachi. There are many living there.
Okay.
Or Aden, or maybe East Africa, and even in Burma. Like, for example, I have recorded in this book that my husband's family is from Burma. They actually have a lot of curios and stuff and trophies from Burma.
Okay.
So they had to also leave Burma during decolonization. And during in East Africa, we have houses of people who are from East Africa.
Yes.
Their furniture is different.
Okay.
Yeah. So the people from Portugal also, Mozambique. So I studied my family tree, and in my family tree I have lawyers, doctors, and well educated. So I start from the 16th century when the community we lived in communities, the Gamkari system.
Yes. Yeah.
Then so we had that traditional social culture that was broken by the Portuguese. They came in with their modern culture. So their modern culture was like different administration, their judicial, their politics was different, their religion was different. So they enforced all of this onto the Goans. And this is how we were forced to take in the Christians, especially those who are in the old conquest.
Got it.
Yeah. Later on they were a little bit less strict, and so the new conquest areas were allowed to,
They're kind of liberal then.
they're more liberal, yes. So ours is a very I would call it even entertaining, but as I was writing this story, ours is a story of kings and kingdoms, empires, emperors, popes, missionaries.
Yes.
Now you see, missionaries came from Rome. They were Italians, they were Spanish, they were French, they were German, and they were Portuguese. So imagine the influences that they brought in, and when they came, and the paintings that you see in different churches and all of that. Even into the houses, you see the tiles, the curios, the glasses, later on in the later centuries. My granduncle was a priest, a missionary priest in Mozambique, Father Inas. He's in this book. So this is how we are able to get, this. I was able to get all this information all through my family tree, and eventually,
the book came up about.
Yes, I was able to get.
So your family, from what I'm hearing now, after going through this book and after hearing from you, is like a microcosm of the big Goan diaspora, some East Africa, Burma, England, all this. Your family is like a microcosm of, is reflecting all these different layers of Goa, the Goan culture, the multi-layered Goan culture. So, and now that you have written this book, you do your artworks, you do some heritage projects also to preserve this culture, as you've been saying. And what are your other projects to preserve the culture that you see now for the future generation? What are the
I
other
would
projects?
say I continue doing my artwork. See, we have an advantage. I would think it's because we have that Iberian culture in us. Like my dad was in Africa, so he had British mannerisms, and in Goa we had this we are more kind of a Lusophone Goan.
Yes.
So with this background, we were, and especially Goans, as you say, in the diaspora, they were able to assimilate so well.
Yes.
And why were they did after decolonization, they went to their respective countries, adopted countries of their choice, mostly Commonwealth countries. And if you notice, they worked hard, they competed, they, really came up the hard way, and eventually they gave a better future to their children.
Yes.
And you can see the Portuguese Prime Minister who has his Goan roots.
Yes.
So many of them excelled on their own.
Yes.
So coming back to your question, what I do today to save our precious heritage is I am now doing a lot of art projects through painting. So I paint with a syringe, and that's being noticed now. I paint with what is that? Using cannulas or maybe feeding tubes. But I'm trying to save our natural heritage. So I love the sunrise, sunsets. So that's what I'm capturing. I'm capturing like my next heritage project is again maybe on the Kunbi saris that are the indigenous tribes that we have. And then maybe another project on the churches of Goa.
Yeah,
so
the Churches of Goa project sounds very interesting because you want to differentiate what is a Baroque structure, what is a different kind of...
yes, I have plans for that eventually to do that. So for that I need to study. And I have... See, if you see my artworks, initially they were more based on spirituality. Yeah, so between spirituality and heritage, I'm treading that path. So most of my artworks are on that. So I do have plans to paint more than kind of write. And currently I am visiting my many families in my village and collecting oral histories, because I do feel that many of our village people are highly educated. you know.
Yes.
And many of them have returned from, after decolonization, they have returned from East Africa, they have returned from Burma, they have returned from mainland India, from
Yes.
Pune, Delhi.
Yeah.
They have come back,
Yes.
and they just sit quietly in their home. They're so talented,
Hmm.
and they are able to converse. See, why do people from all the intellects, all the writers and artists from all over India come to Goa? Because they can engage
Yes.
with even the locals.
Yes.
They don't even need, and
True.
this is the advantage is because we did have our Iberian and our British culture.
Hmm.
So that
True.
has played a part,
Yes.
even to the common Goans. You see them speaking English
Yes.
so well.
Yeah. Yes.
So that is the reason I do feel that we have our markers,
Yes.
and we have to save our heritage. Yeah, that's my passion.
Yes. Madam Vaz, I think we are coming to the end of this program, and towards the end, I always ask my guests to leave a message for our audience. Please, if you have something to say to our audience.
Well, I would say to believe in yourself. That's goes without saying, but to love what you do
Yes.
and to do what you love. Or I would put it the other way, to do what you love and love what you do. At the end of the day, you have to know who you are for that. You got to know who you are, and you got to be true to yourself. That means you should not listen to anybody. I don't listen to anybody, honestly.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would never have reached this stage.
Right.
I've been very fortunate to been invited by the Goa Heritage
Action group,
Festival.
yeah.
Action group.
Yeah.
No, but festival.
The Goa Heritage
to
Festival. Yes.
recently to
Yes.
launch this book. I have been also invited by the Goa Familia to showcase this book at the Serendipity Arts Festival,
Yes.
and they gave me a little corner which was just so stunning. And
Nice.
yeah, I've come a long way, and with
Yes.
no academic background, it was an easy journey, but I'm glad that this book has really made me feel at peace. Yeah.
And it's a great
Yeah.
gift to the Goan culture. You know, it's a treasure trove of.
See, in 10
learning.
years, maybe 10 years from now,
Yeah.
it will collect more histories,
Yes.
more identities, more stories, more associations,
True.
and it will be
It will grow.
more valuable. Yeah,
Yes.
it will be valuable, and it will as our generations progress. And this book is probably written already for those who are not even born.
Yes.
It's going to be such a treasure,
Mm.
and knowing this, I feel really, really satisfied.
Thank
Yeah,
you, and
thank you.
we're grateful to hear about the book from
Thank
you.
you so very much.
Yes. Hi. So this was Clarice Vaz, and if you want to hear more local stories of Goa, of Saligao, of across Goa, I believe you can check her Facebook page. She's got around, she was telling me, 116 stories by now.
160.
160
But village
stories.
stories,
Village
village
stories.
village
If you're
stories,
interested, you can
yeah.
go. Also, this book, if you'd like to buy, you can contact her through her website, claricevaz.com.
Oh, it's available at Broadway.
It's available at Broadway.
It could
yeah?
be available, yeah,
Okay.
soon. They've got an ISBN.
Okay.
And it's also a free download on my website.
Your website,
It's a
yes.
free download.
Okay,
Yeah, because I
great.
wanted to go to maximum people, and
Yes.
they should share it.
Yes.
Yes, that would be nice.
Thank you, audience, for your time with us. See you next week. Bye.